Hi everyone, welcome to Tom and Jesse Talk Movies. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Tom.
Before we begin, questions, comments, concerns, wow, that's great. Contact us at csprograms@cshlibrary.org. This is a very exciting episode for Tom and I, because this is one of Tom's, I don't know, want to say it's one of your favorite films, but it's a film that you've kind of talked my ear off about for quite some time. Sideways, starring Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church.
Yes, from 2004.
2004.
And we're going to be this month, we're going to be talking about Oscar movies.
Yes.
And Sideways was nominated quite a bit.
A really interesting character study of the film.
Yes, and next show we'll be talking about Annie Hall by Woody Allen.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you finally saw this movie. I've talked to you about this movie a long time.
The disclaimer I'm gonna give, I think, before we get into this is that if you haven't seen the movie, I would see it first before you watch this, only because we'll get into some, I guess you would call it a spoiler, pretty significant plot points. So I would say see it first because, well, this will make more sense once you see it, but it's sort of helped to reshape my opinion in one of the characters once I was made aware of certain. So in short, I guess the synopsis would be, so we have Thomas Hayden Church and Paul Giamatti, who are good friends. They live in California. Thomas Hayden Church is getting married, and Paul Giamatti takes them on a trip of the wineries.
Kind of like a little bachelor.
It's a bachelor party.
Bachelor party, just them to the, I guess, middle-aged men is what they're. No, I don't think that's middle-aged.
No,
but they're not 25 years old.
Right.
Which is actually all the more interesting to me.
Of course.
I'm sick of seeing people my age and younger going on party trips.
Of course. Yes, this is very different. Of course, thematically, you expect a certain maybe clientele that visits wineries. You know, it's not like your prototypical Las Vegas. Let's hit every nightclub and place in town. So that also made it a little bit more interesting. Again, these guys are not. They're not old by any means, but they're not young. They're not, straight out of college.
Right.
And so, of course, there's a bunch of hijinks that ensue. It's not so straightforward. Thomas Hayden Church's character has something very specific in mind. He would like to, how would we put this diplomatically? He would like to
party. He's going off getting married with his best buddy, who's big into wine. Character name is Paul Giamatti's character is Miles.
Thank you.
And Thomas Hayden Church's character is named. It escaped me, but they're going.
He's a very forgettable actor.
Jack.
Yes, that sounds.
And Miles and Jack are just going on this road trip through, northern wine country, California, and right before the wedding. And the film just kind of follows these guys. It's very much a character piece. It's not really like plot heavy, story driven. We're kind of following these characters, and as the movie progresses, you get to know them more and more, their deep dark secrets, and so kind of like a slice of life kind of movie. At first it's like, okay, who are these guys? And as they are traveling from winery to bar to restaurant, you're along for the ride, and I feel like there's a certain kind of humor to this movie. It's very quirky, it's dry. So if you like that kind of stuff, I strongly recommend. This is an interesting film that I saw it I was like 15 when I saw this movie, and I liked it back then, but now watching it as I'm older, I like it. I think it's absolutely hysterical because it's definitely, I guess the dramedy is what you would call it, and that's totally up my alley. And what I love about this movie is that there are flawed characters, and the movie is not afraid to show you just the skeletons in their closet. So it's kind of like this buddy movie, but you're learning about these characters as the guy on the bachelor trip. So
it's a great cast, as you said. So as tactfully as I can put this, Thomas Hayden Church, he's kind of a newcomer. He's an actor that now is doing commercials. and
He's the wild.
he's the wild one. His preoccupation is to say he would like to find one more partner before he gets married.
Yeah.
And so that's really
That's his plan for the trip.
that's his plan, and he kind of looks Paul Giamatti into it, and
He brings his own baggage and stuff.
he brings his own baggage, but that introduces you to some really interesting and lovely characters that played by Sandra really sensational Virginia Madsen.
Yes. Who was nominated for Virginia Madsen was nominated for Best Supporting
She
Actress.
was terrific, and Thomas Jason Sharks is also nominated, if I'm not mistaken. They're working characters. They're
it's
likable in their own respects. In some ways, but like you had said, you made a great point. It's not the typical Hollywood garnish of everybody is flawless.
And that's what I like about this movie, because they're like everyday characters. I'm sure you see some of friends or family or somebody in these people. And to me, there's nothing more amazing than everyday people who they're not Hollywood looking, the regular people, and regular people are so much more interesting than just watching a bunch of models like on a beach.
And even the plot itself is not so romanticized. I mean, how many films? Oh, you could have done the whole Vegas thing. You could have gone to another popular destination for that shit.
Yeah, like I know The Hangover. Like I know it's a very different movie, but like I'll gravitate towards something like Sideways because I personally would get more out of Sideways than I would from The Hangover. I know The Hangover is going for like comedy, and that's fine, but I will have more entertainment with following these characters, and I find it funny.
This is less stylized Hollywood. It's more, like you said, it's an authentic look at just it's an authentic, believable look at what a bachelor party would be. In Napa Valley.
And these are real people with real issues, and like we said, Thomas Hayden Church's character is kind of like the wild one. Has certain motive for this weekend. The other guy, Miles, played by Paul Giamatti, is kind of like neurotic, down on his luck kind of guy, depressed. He's divorced. Things didn't work out with his wife, and
failed author.
Right, he's trying to get a book his novel published, and it's like he's very critical of himself. He lives in this apartment. I know he's a teacher, and he just doesn't really have much going for him. He doesn't really have much to say for himself. So he's along for the trip. So he brings those issues along for the trip, and Jack brings his, even though he's probably like late 40s, early 50s, he brings his wild frat boy ways along for it. And I think it's absolutely hysterical. And this is directed by Alexander Payne, who a lot of his movies are like this, but he did Nebraska, which is very much like Sideways. And that's what I like about this director. His films they're dramedies, and they're very much real people with real world problems that you could relate to, but very dry type of humor, observational type of humor. And just Nebraska is great. I would love to hear your opinion on that. And Sideways is just as good. And but what I appreciated along the way is that these characters have major issues, and they're not really like, I mean, one is worse than the other, but they're not really good guys. And that's what I liked about these kinds of films, is that we don't need a likable, like model citizen to really follow. And to me, there's nothing more interesting than real life. So that's why I really liked it. And what's also really cool, like if you're into wine and stuff, it's kind of a cool setting to do this kind of thing, because it's an absolutely beautiful, Napa Valley and everything. And then they're back at the hotel room talking about their issues. And it's like, I just think it's a really nice mix of comedy and drama. And these are interesting characters, so I enjoyed going on the trip.
What's funny to me is obviously.
And this was your first time.
This is my first time watching it.
You liked it.
I really enjoyed it. As someone that's kind of a novitiate in the world of wine, I know nothing about wine. It was cool to see, because that's Paul Giamatti's obsession, really.
It's really all he.
It's all he has, and to see him kind of be snobby about it at times, and he makes some remark about how he's not going to drink. Was it Merlot? But the way, to Paul Giamatti's credit, the way he plays the character so neurotically, where he's just always on edge all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a movie for an older crowd. Like I don't feel like a high schooler wouldn't get it, but yeah, it's a very mature type of film, and it's interesting to see what issues people at that age group that it's old, but like at every age group that like in your 20s, it's college, movies are always focused around 20-year-olds at college and school and 30s. It's like, okay, we're just starting our life and house hunting, and then by 40s and 50s, like you're settled down, and it's interesting to see these characters who really Paul Giamatti just doesn't have it together at all. And I feel bad for him, but then you see some of the stuff he does and hear some of the things he did, and you're like, I mean, it's well deserved, but where are we going to go with this character?
Right.
And then what's going to happen after this trip? And of course, they get into all silly kinds of shenanigans along the way that are laugh out loud funny, but then we get into some real serious stuff. Like, I really liked the relationship that Paul Giamatti had with Virginia Madsen, who's is she a waitress at one of the places?
She's a waitress at a bar.
Yeah.
Very in close proximity to a hotel.
Yeah.
That Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church are staying.
Yeah, and this restaurant that they go to, like Miles goes there often, and he wants to, get to know her. And are they going to start a relationship? Are they not? Where's it going to go? And there's a really great moment when they're hanging out, and Virginia Madsen brings her friend Sandra Oh along, and when they're all hanging out, I think it's Sandra Oh's house, and they just have like a deep conversation, and you're like, that's like really fascinating. I don't know. I like looking into other people's lives,
and that relationship is very antithetical to, Sandra Oh's character and Thomas Hayden Church, their relationship, because Thomas Hayden Church makes it explicitly clear what he's going on that trip to do. He's looking for one last hookup before he's kind of tethered to his marriage.
Yeah.
And then I like that there is kind of a delicate balance between the humor and between the drama.
Good balance.
There's a good balance.
Yeah.
It's a very heartfelt relationship between Virginia Madsen and Paul Giamatti. And that's kind of why when the deception starts to unfold and it affects Paul Giamatti and Virginia Madsen, you as the viewer kind of feel it, because you're like, you know what, they had some really nice special moments together, and you're kind of sorry to see that there's at least a temporary bridge between them.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to talk about, because again, for the majority of the movie, I actually did find Paul Giamatti to be a sort of a sympathetic character. I felt bad for him because of really what he did. He's alone in his life, went through a rough divorce, as you enumerated before. He's got this book that hasn't come to fruition. Now, one of the revelations, which kind of comes really abruptly, you don't expect, is that Paul Giamatti in many ways is still obsessed with his ex-wife.
Yeah.
Now you find out he cheated on his ex-wife.
And they don't really go into detail.
They don't go into detail. You just know that it seems that he's the one that was the cheater, that initiated the cheating. Again, you don't know what the backstory is behind it, but is that a factor? Because for me personally, that made me take a step back and go, well, you know what, I don't feel quite as badly as I did for Paul Giamatti.
Right.
How did that did it alter your perception of what you thought of his character?
I mean, I still, obviously cheating is awful. I still feel bad for him, just in the sense that like he seems regretful, and like, yeah, that's an awful, dishonest thing to do. But I do feel I kind of like he deserves it, of course, but I feel for him that he has nothing else in his life. I don't really know what he was like prior to the film.
Right.
So, and I wish the movie did explore that, because then it'd be like, oh, I don't care. He's an awful person. Why should I feel bad for him? But I also don't have to feel bad for his character in order to like the movie or to be on board, because like I said, I mean, that's a real world issue, and that's why it's like you're watching these two flawed characters, and it's like, does he deserve all of this? And it's like, I mean, yeah, but will he learn from it? Where is this character gonna go?
And here's the interesting position. So again, Paul Giamatti does appear to be pretty contrite about cheating on his wife. I mean, he calls his ex-wife when he's on the trip. He drunkenly dials her.
Yeah.
Ultimately, one of the more gut-wrenching scenes in the film is when Thomas Hayden Church has his wedding. His Paul Giamatti's ex-wife is invited to the wedding.
Yeah.
So Paul Giamatti then meets the new husband and reveals that she's pregnant. That's Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the character.
Yeah.
The other thing that I feel ultimately bad about is that there's this juxtaposition between Paul Giamatti, who is this hapless loser, for lack of a better word, and you have Thomas Hayden Church, who's this kind of happy-go-lucky.
Yeah. Money's not an issue. He's got a career.
Commercial star. He's got good looks and he's got charm. And you have Paul Giamatti, who's the opposite of the spectrum. And Thomas Hayden Church gets away with this whole thing.
He does.
He gets away with the
He
whole
does.
thing.
He's not a good guy.
Right. And so, say maybe this was a one-time event. Again, never condoning cheating.
No, of course. But I think there is a middle ground.
Right.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, Paul Giamatti's life, he suffered immeasurably for maybe a bad decision that he made. Thomas Hayden Church not only gets out of this whole fiasco.
That's the way with everything. Everything works out for him.
Everything works out. He comes out smelling
That's
like
interesting.
roses.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And yeah.
One more thing, you had Paul Giamatti who went out of his way at times to continue this facade to ensure that Thomas Hayden Church's soon-to-be wife finds out nothing. So he is a culprit in helping Thomas Hayden Church keep his life together. And if you do some reflecting there, Paul Giamatti is nothing, and here he is helping someone who he might not even like all that much. Patch everything together. So I think that itself is a very interesting juxtaposition. That's almost a more endearing quality. Look at the turn, look at the lengths that Paul Giamatti would go to save someone he might not ultimately even love as a person.
Yeah, I think you don't have to agree with what a character does, but I think you can. I mean, as a human being, I think you can, because they gave such life to the character of Miles, I feel that you can both feel like, oh, you deserve it. I mean, your life is cruddy because of what you did, you cheated. But I think you could feel that way, and I think you could also feel, but yet I feel bad for you that you have nothing, going on. It's deserved, but it's like, because I felt like these were real people, like people that I met, because I think the director does such a good idea of bringing these people to life. I think that you can feel a mix of emotions.
And look, that's where the authenticity of this film comes in, because nobody that I've ever met, myself included, is perfect. So you're going to have character flaws, and again, I'm not trying to undervalue, cheating on a spouse. So that's terribly wrong. But everybody has warts. So that's what made this film for me even more interesting. Again, because you can feel sympathy at times for Paul Giamatti's character. He cheated on his wife. I mean, it's like
and you could exactly. But you could also look at like I said, like it's like he cheated on his wife, but you know what? Look at the it is deserved, but it's like look what happens with Virginia Madsen, and it's like, is that going to work out in the movie? The way the movie ends, it's like what's going to happen to it? And I think that's interesting.
And you just mentioned something I kind of want to get into, because we don't get a whole lot of insight into the book Paul Giamatti's wife. Virginia Madsen ends up reading this gigantic manuscript, and she makes a comment in the third act of the film, more or less, about the ambiguity of the ending of the book. And that ambiguity of the book in the ending sort of parallels the ending of the film, if you think about it. So, of course, what happens is Paul Giamatti, Miles goes back to Virginia Madsen's apartment after they kind of got into their quarrel. Virginia Madsen had previously left, Miles a message on his phone, just kind of saying, "Hey, I read your book and I liked it." It wasn't necessarily an invitation to come back into her life,
right?
But Paul Giamatti's character Miles felt very, very strongly about their relationship,
right?
And Will shows up to her door, and the movie kind of comes.
Right, and it's kind of like, will he get a second chance at life? And I like these kinds of movies because, even though it's a simple movie, it just shows that human emotions are complicated. And it's like, you can be conflicted. Like, this character deserves it, but I also want to see something nice happen to him. Like that's such a conflicting thing, and I like when movies do that because they're making the audience go like, "Oh God, how do I feel about this person?" And I think that's cool. And like I completely understand, some people would be like, "Oh, both of these guys, they're horrible human beings. They deserve everything." And I'd say, "Yeah, you're right." But then if somebody says, "Yeah, they're both awful, but I feel a bit of sympathy for the one guy, he's horrible." It's like it's complex, and that's it's good.
And to the point that you made, also, because you know so little of the backstory about Miles, about what were the events leading up to the infidelity.
Yeah,
It kind of fits with the open-endedness of the ending, where you know this movie kind of sees, and again, it's not a profoundly deep movie by any means, but it's a great character study, and it allows the viewer, I feel, to kind of use their own imagination to fill in the blanks. And if you think that this was a very wanton, deliberate act by Miles that he cheated on his wife, then you're probably going to think at the end, well, Virginia Madsen doesn't want it back.
exactly.
But if you see that there's some good in him,
Right.
maybe you're influenced in such a way where you're like, you know what, she's going to open the door for him.
Exactly.
So
Does everyone deserve a second chance? I don't know. That's subjective, and there's many different interpretations I could see. So
it is kind of cool to see this movie in so many regards feels like an underdog film.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it got critical recognition, and I'm glad that it garnered some attention for awards, because this is one of those. It's not one of those big budget movies by any means. And
Right.
this is the kind of movie I feel deserves
Simple,
recognition from the Academy.
It's simple filmmaking, and this is like it feels almost poetic. Like this could be a novel. Like you're discussing characters and their motives, and I just think that's so good.
And what's funny is, so ultimately, you took, and I don't mean to say this disparagingly, but you took an actor like Paul Giamatti, he's in films that he's in, he doesn't normally play the lead, you would say, right?
Right.
Thomas Hayden Church, so to me, he's not a very multi-dimensional actor.
Right.
Virginia Madsen, I think, is always been great.
I think she's wonderful.
But you just put this cast together, Sandra Oh herself as well. She's excellent. Thomas Hayden Church just worked in this movie.
He does.
Like,
That's what the character. That's what the script calls
Right.
for.
and I
he really
walked
made
away.
it.
I'm like, okay, he didn't tax himself with his acting abilities, but I'm like, he played this like kind of burnt out 40-year-old frat boy perfectly. Like
He did.
that's the way he played it. And Paul Giamatti is this hypochondriac almost, where he's
Yeah.
worried about everything, and he's like always on 11. Just
Yeah. And I haven't really seen these two actors in other things. I mean, like, not like Thomas Hayden Church. I can't. I mean, like Spider-Man 3. I saw him. You can't really judge
Killer
him.
Joe.
Yeah, I don't even like remember that movie. But like, Paul Giamatti, I've seen in like other like he was like San Andreas. But it's like, okay, what else?
He always seems to be relegated to the background. He's not that. He's not, when you're looking to cast a film, Tom Cruise and Paul Giamatti are side by
Of
side.
course, he's a specific. I think you could have only cast these two in this role. I think the casting is perfect.
And their relationship is terrific.
It's hysterical.
I
I want to hang out with these guys. They
Oh
seem
my God.
hysterical. They may not be good people, but do the job.
There are so many times in this movie that Thomas Hayden Church does something very inappropriate. And Paul Giamatti is like the father role. He's like, I cannot believe you're that stupid. I mean, it's just, their relationship really works so well. So awesome. Yeah, I really
I strongly recommend it. If watch the trailer on YouTube.
Oh, I would too.
It's a good representation of the film.
Excellent.
And,
Thank you guys for watching.
I think that's it for today. And next time we will be talking about Annie Hall, which I had seen once years ago. I'm very much looking forward to getting into it.
I have not seen it. I've seen very few Woody Allen
I
films.
recently started watching Woody Allen stuff like 2 or 3 months ago, and very interesting person to talk about.
So tune in next time.
Any questions or comments, you can contact us at csprograms@cslibrary.com.
Thank you.